I pass off nothing. I was the only solution consultant, still running the business, a lot of late nights. So I think, especially with kids, I still had kind of the home life, that I wanted to be responsive to. I mean, quick plug, like Campfire was super helpful. Did the A and the B myself with no help. The hardest part is you're still expected to maintain revenue velocity and you're still on the front lines as an AE. Sales calls and investor calls, it's a lot of work. I don't build anything for the board anymore. And I tell the entire company, if you're not building something in Claude Code and Cowork and Replit, then I think you have a really good reason why. You need to rethink how work is performed in this current era. Finance and accounting is an amazing place to start.
Welcome back to Funded, a show taking you behind the scenes of the startup fundraising journey. On this episode, I sat down with John Glasgow, CEO of Campfire, an AI-native ERP that's leading the charge on bringing accounting into the AI age. John's fundraising story is pretty wild. He raised 3 rounds in quick succession from top-tier investors Foundation, Excel, and Ribbit Capital. They had investors pushing them unsolicited term sheets for most of 2025, and it's no wonder why. They've more than doubled ARR for 6 straight quarters, and they're doing it with a lean team and strong unit economics. John set out to build Campfire based on a decade of experience in finance leadership roles for high-growth companies like Adobe and Bill.com. He serves as the CFO of Campfire to this day, and he shared some practical tips for how he and other tech-forward finance pros are truly gaining leverage from AI, especially Claude Code and Claude Cowork. Lots of tangible advice for founders building in AI or just looking to get smarter ahead of their next fundraise push. I really enjoyed this conversation with John. Let's get into it. John Glasgow, thank you so much for joining us today. Really excited to have you on this episode of Funded.
Alex, thank you for having me. Really excited to be here. Obviously, we've known each other for a few years, and it's good to tell our story together. So thanks for the time.
Of course, yeah. And it has been quite the journey that you've been on over the last couple of years. So excited to get into some of the milestones that you've hit since we last chatted in 2024. But to start us off, could you please just tell us a little bit about Campfire's mission and the product that you are building in pursuit of that mission?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a former finance leader at a mid-sized tech company, and my mission to provide superpowers for finance and accounting teams. And there's a lot that kind of goes into giving superpowers, but that's really our mission. And whether it's automating a lot of the transactional accounting, speeding up the financial reporting, unlocking insights, moving towards a continuous close, customers like Replit, Decagon, Posthog, a lot of tech companies are on Campfire now for those reasons.
I love that phrasing of giving finance and accounting professionals superpowers. We actually use that exact phrase when we're talking about leveling up our team at Air CFO in 2026. In a lot of your recent posts and some of your other podcast appearances, you talked about this concept of strategic accounting as being a capability that accounting professionals will be able to unlock once they have this team of AI assistants kind of doing a lot of the blocking and tackling for them. Could you speak a little bit about what strategic accounting means to you and maybe what some of the accountants using Campfire have been able to contribute to their organizations once Campfire's been able to help them take some of the more tactical things off of their plate?
Yeah, I mean, as an AI-native ERP, we're the system of record for the accounting teams. And so they look to us to deliver the financial reporting, the data, whether it's tax, whether it's a fundraise. And ultimately, it goes back to when I was in finance, in corporate finance. Very acute example, I was at Adobe on the finance team, and all analysis was actually done by strategic finance, which was my team. And the accounting team was not analyzing the historical data. It was actually my team. And so I truly believe that in this new era, as the transactional accounting gets more and more automated, that the accounting team should take on the analysis of more of the accounting data. And so just a very acute version of that, historical data being like LTV to CAC or profitability, or looking at, hey, we've got like 5 call recorders. There's an opportunity to go ahead and consolidate call recorder solutions, or let's move from PLG to SLG. We've got 30 folks paying for Zoom separately on their corporate card. We should have somebody reach out and move to an enterprise license. Nobody at the company has better visibility into the accounting data than the accounting team. And so like taking the financial reports, whether it's like Flux or whatever it is, circling numbers on the page and in between closes, creating work for yourself and going and meeting with internal stakeholders, whether it's sales, marketing, engineering, and delivering value across the organization, I truly believe is the future of the accounting profession.
I think there is so much appetite from accounting professionals to do that more strategic accounting work. But the issue has always just been that there weren't enough hours of the day with all of the tactical moving numbers around that was required to just give that month-end close, like to put all of the numbers into the right boxes. So fast forward a year or two, or however long it takes for solutions like Campfire to kind of proliferate within larger organizations. What do you see the composition of a finance/accounting function looking like? And how do you see those roles shifting? You mentioned the accounting team taking on a bit more of the analysis and that kind of stuff, but what do you think will be like the core bundles of tasks owned by the finance and accounting function in an AI augmented organization?
Yeah, well, first off, our customers that are growing incredibly fast, a lot of the AI natives, like I mentioned earlier, there is not material headcount growth. And so we are able to automate a lot of the work that grows linearly with the business, whether it's sending invoices or accruals, things that just tend to grow. If we can automate it, then it does level off irrespective of the velocity of the business. And so that's a huge push for us. What the team should look like is you still need accountants on the team. Of course, someone needs to be reviewing the work, even if AI is doing it, you still need someone reviewing it, particularly if you're in an audit environment, right? You need somebody that's from an internal controls perspective. You still need humans. You still need folks like checking all of it. But the team generally moves from data entry to data review. And so data review is incredibly scalable. So accounting teams will stay light, and we have many customers under the hundreds of millions of ARR that, one, two, accounting people on the team. Then you get into finance. I still believe, again, strategic finance, forward-looking, whether it's annual planning, whether it's ad hoc, analysis for the board. You're still going to continue to need at least one finance person, whether it's a fundraise or some material event or just kind of internal finance business partners. So, but again, teams are going to be leaner, particularly as more and more of the Flux commentary of the traditional FP&A work is a first pass is being done. Like Campfire will write phenomenal Flux commentary for you for month end, quarter and year end. And so the finance person goes from writing it all by hand on a blank workbook to reviewing a first draft. And so we're able to materially shift the prep of it. And it's more about actioning on the Flux because there's, again, more time, as you acknowledged. We're giving accounting and finance more time to go action on things, to stay lean. And in a current environment, no board, no CEO is saying, let's load up the accounting team with a bunch of headcount, right? I think there's this like natural mandate right now. People are saying, you need to look at AI first, and then we can look to headcount. And AI's come a long way for both finance and accounting.
I love that vision of the different roles that finance and accounting professionals can play. We have a framework that we put together around kind of a future state job description for an AI-powered accounting and finance professional. And the title that we've given this role is Business Performance Architect. And it kind of consists of 3 layers that actually map really well to what you just described. At the bottom layer, you kind of have the systems architecture level, and that is configuring systems like Campfire and Ramp and everything that goes into a modern back office, making all of those tools play together really well, and then reviewing the outputs that come from them to make sure that they're giving you the accurate results. The second layer is the business intelligence. So I think one issue with accounting as it stands today is that one of the things that gets crowded out by the tactical work is the really going in deep to understand the story behind the numbers and communicating that story across the organization. And I think that's a really big opportunity for humans to add value in the future is taking the outputs from the system, but then filtering those out, understanding like what is actually important, what should be acted on, what can be ignored, like that kind of a thing. And then the last layer is performance improvement and what you call like business partnering, working cross-functionally to actually like move the needle on those metrics that matter across the organization. Because I think the accounting and finance professionals, like you said, they have the best visibility into what's going on from a financial standpoint across the organization. I think they're really well positioned to be able to like add a lot more value that they're not really being given the opportunity to add today because they're just so busy with the tactical stuff. Does that resonate with how you guys are talking about it internally at Campfire?
It does. And I would say when you speed up the close, you take some of the seasonality pressure of like the late nights, like going into like a board meeting, or call it 4th of July, like no accountant gets the 4th of July off because it's like quarter end. And so it's like, how do we get it down? Not just so they can focus on strategic work, but maybe there's a PTO or a birthday, or you're not working on a night or a weekend anymore, because that is one of the reasons for burnout in accounting, right? Is like, hey, the work is kind of very intense, it's very seasonal. And so there's other areas we're seeing value as well. But to your point on like how the role is evolving, I get so many pings from accountants that say, I pitched Campfire in a job interview, and they said that's one of the reasons why I got the job. They're looking for folks that are bringing, it's called a systems forward accountant. They're looking for folks to bring a modern approach to accounting, exactly as you've described. And that is, people are looking for that because people see that being the future. And people often tell me, we bought Campfire, you know, your product's amazing, it's everything we need, but we also see your AI roadmap, your AI leadership. And so, these people are pitching themselves on their roadmap on how they're going to bring modern tooling. They're going to think differently, and they're going to be instituting modern tooling and modern ways of doing things. And so I think like with that inherently is like a very strong AI roadmap that they bring to the table.
I love that idea for an advertisement for Campfire, like an accountant who's at their 4th of July barbecue and they like get an email from Campfire that says that the books have been closed. I think that's a future that all accountants would definitely be excited about for sure.
Yeah. I mean, we get those all the time. Like, hey, we're closing so fast now. Someone told me they like went to the board and shared all these strategic projects they're able to take on now that they're on Campfire. They redid working capital. They put in a new payment processor. They're just like going around transforming every part. They put in a procurement tool. They're like, we kind of finally have time to do this big backlog of strategic projects. And when you get to the board and you're saying, hey, here, I've rethought all of these processes internally. I mean, you think about promotions, you think about visibility, you think about like how often is a controller pitching in board meetings until now? I mean, this is stuff that, it has been transformative for careers.
Yeah, you probably get the opportunity to interact with some of the most tech forward, like accounting and finance professionals out there. Like those are the people that your pitch really resonates with. What are some of the characteristics or like practices of those people who are really succeeding at unlocking AI to improve their businesses and also accelerate their careers?
I would say first off, they're just ready for something new. I mean, I founded Campfire as a corporate finance leader that was just really ready for a new ERP. And so they've, often have been on the old way or they never have. And they're like, I've heard so many horror stories. I only want to do the new way. And so it's folks that are like, we've turned over the whole stack. I mean, you acknowledge like corporate cards and spend management and like everything is turned over. These folks are ready for a new ERP. I think just fundamentally, like it's time. Everything in the tech stack is turned over except my general ledger. I've got great payroll that's modern. I got great, spend management solution that's modern. They kind of like went through everything and they're like, the GL is kind of the last thing we haven't turned over into a modern solution. So they come to us for that. And then they really dig into what we've built and they're like, I am in an AI first organization. And so many CEOs and boards are saying, first, look to AI tooling before you invest in people, before you invest in anything else. And I hear that every week from folks that go with us, which is we are an AI native organization internally, and we see Campfire as being the leading AI solution in your category, in the ERP category. And we always give them a sandbox and they always test the AI and they're like, fundamentally, you guys do have the best AI. And so I think it's folks that are ready for something new, but also ready to move the role forward. And then everything we touched on earlier around speed to close, ability to be transformative within the organization, kind of all that unlocks from there.
The tool stack that a company runs on is a huge part of like how a company can become AI native within their back office. I'd be curious to hear outside of, making the most of Campfire and Ramps, like AI tools, like what are some of the other ways that you see AI forward accounting and finance professionals just kind of like operating differently compared to more like legacy minded folks?
Yeah, I'm the CFO at Campfire. So here's what I do. I mean, I go into Claude. On the desktop version, there's Cowork. If you've not used Cowork yet, highly recommend it. Or our customer Replit. Go use these tools. You do not need to be a coding expert. Claude Code or Cowork, depending on your flavor of it. Inherently, they're the same on the back end. And I connected to Ramps MCP, and I said, build me a 10-page report on all of our spend for January month to date. And I sat down with leadership, and I walked through, and I gave it our slide. I gave it our slide template, a Campfire, and it built a presentation for me, built charts, graphs, and I don't build anything for the board anymore. It's built in a Claude Code or in a Claude Cowork, all internal presentations. And I tell the entire company, if you're not building something in Claude Code and Cowork and Replit, then I think you have a really good reason why. And so, I mean, and everybody here, like we have a channel of, here's what I built. In the all hands, people are sharing out, like, here's how I've automated most of my job. And this is for finance and accounting, and this is across the entire organization. Like, you need to rethink how work is performed in this current era. And finance and accounting is an amazing place to start.
I love that example of using Claude to put together your board write-ups or slide decks. I think I'm going to steal that slide building tactic for some of their CFOs all hands.
Honestly, it builds decks better than I can. A lot faster. I mean, I built, coming out of investment bank.
You probably spent a lot of your early career building decks. That's saying something.
I spent thousands of hours in Excel building charts. And these are charts that are better than what I could do because it's written by code. And so they just like fundamentally look better. They're interactive. I built our company dashboard that is now like on a TV at Campfire. There's like a dashboard that I built just prompting Claude. And of course, Campfire has APIs and an MCP. And so you can easily connect Campfire to really any solution of your choice. And I was building an AR agent for Campfire the other day. It just like kind of like a little agent workflow that's sending emails for me on kind of custom dunning. Again, board slides, anything we've got great AI, and then anything we can't do, I use, a third-party AI and connect it to Campfire. And that's the future of the role. It doesn't need to be in tools. Obviously, there's a lot of great AI tooling, but I think building on top of tooling is critical.
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't realize that you had a kind of your own official MCP for interacting with Campfire data inside of Claude. That's really cool. I'm going to have to work with our team with one of our clients that we have running on Campfire and play around with that a little bit, because that sounds like it could be massive, especially when combined with tools like Claude Code. And also, just quick shout out, Replit and Anthropic, both former Air CFO clients as well. We're pretty proud of those two on our logo list. So yeah, we've had a front row seat to a lot of this AI building as it's been happening over the years. So you talked about some of the features of Campfire, and it's clear that you guys are one of the companies that's shipping the fastest in this category of agentic accounting. I'd be curious to hear what's been the biggest challenge from your end in building these effective accounting agents, because it seems like it's been a problem that's been a little bit tougher to crack than like agents in some of these other areas like coding or legal.
I would say change management for our accounting teams has been the hardest part. Like, we have agents that'll, whether it's an accrual, a reclass, You can have it do all sorts of tasks. You can put it into your closed checklist in Campfire and have an agent workflow that's going to handle, even something very complex like reading your expense policy and then spotting, inconsistencies in terms of how you're handling an accounting policy across a close before you lock a period. Like we have, agents for audit, anything you can think of. But I think helping accountants learn how to leverage the power of AI and get really comfortable with it, particularly if they're in we have public companies on Campfire too. Like if they're in an audit or if they're in a SOX environment, there is a lot of fear of like, is this going to be okay? And so we have the AI draft work paper, supporting documentation. It'll sit on any sort of work that it's performed. You're in full control of the AI. Like, it won't just kind of like run wild on your accounting for you. And so I think like help a lot of training and a lot of hand-holding and getting accountants comfortable of even how to look for a hallucination, right? I think like just like a human, AI is not perfect either. And so checking its work is critical. Helping them learn to trust and helping them learn how to perform tasks where you're not manually booking a journal entry anymore. You're building an AI agent to book it. That has been the biggest gap. But for folks that invest and are willing to invest with us from a training perspective, they're the ones seeing the most gains.
Yeah, I think that the change management is critical. And especially with an audience like accounting where the core ERP hasn't changed in 20 years. So there is a lot of like old habits that need to be rewired a little bit. I'd love to hear just a little bit about what that training like looks like. What do you think of as kind of the steps that an accounting professional can take to get to the point where they are taking full advantage of these tools as they like based on their current capabilities?
Well, first, we bear hug all of our customers in terms of like, even the first close, we'll do a live call with them and like kind of work through stuff for the first time in Campfire. Mm-hmm. I think the other one is like, as new features come out in Campfire, like we have our own foundational model. We're the only ERP with our own foundational model. There's a lot of power in what we've done there. But I think like when it came out, like helping, sitting down with accountants or, attending one of our sessions or just trying it out on your own, and we can get you, a sandbox, but not doing it in production environments. But just like really, it's like a new hire on your team. You really got to invest, and there's like negative value in the beginning, and then they kind of like work their way out and they become incredibly valuable. It's the same with AI. I so commonly see folks give up before they kind of break out of the negative value, just like a new hire. But like you obviously wouldn't fire a new hire on day 2 because they didn't do the flux the way you like it. They didn't do an accrual the way you like it. You've got to give them feedback. You've got to kind of invest and train. And it's the same with the AI. And the folks that punch through are the ones seeing all the value.
I like that analogy a lot. The trough that you'll go into before you ultimately come out ahead, because it does take some extra time to get up the learning curve with these tools. I'd love to hear a little bit about what went into that decision to build your own foundational model. I didn't realize that you had done that at Campfire, and I do think that's a really cool selling point. What do you think that building your own foundational model allows you to do, or what sort of advantages does it give you over a company that's leveraging one of the more off-the-shelf models from one of the big research labs?
Yeah, we still use the off-the-shelf models too. Anthropic published a case study about Campfire, but we'll use them in specific scenarios. So for natural language queries, we will go to Anthropic because the sheer volume of things you could say to it. If it's a transactional accounting task, like coding invoices or a custom dimension that you have that's like you want to auto code, we have found there are 3 advantages we have over the leading commercial models. One is performance. Our accuracy is much higher. The reason for that is we have a core foundational model, and then every customer actually has their own mini model sitting on top of that. And the mini model is fine-tuned purely for their own dimensions, their own chart of accounts, their own vendor structure. Even if they have some we have unlimited dimensionality in Campfire. So they may have, 100 custom dimensions in Campfire, and this mini model is going to be purely kind of fine-tuned, sitting on top of the core model for their own use. So we've seen we have the best performance. And then attribution. If you're going into an audit or you want to understand how to arrive at the conclusion, we get rid of all black box because we own the model. We can open things up and truly show how to arrive at the conclusion. And obviously auditors love that, accountants love that, because to trust AI, you need to understand how it got there. And so we're able to just finally detail every step that was taken in ways that, we just didn't see in the market. And then also security. Your data does not need to leave Campfire's environment. People often say, is my data being used for training? Yes, we believe the commercial models are not when it says it in the SLAs, but when it never has to leave Campfire's environment because it's our own model, it's our own data centers, we have our own GPUs here, particularly in the lower enterprise, the bigger customers that have looking for the most airtight kind of safety of their data, we can go to them with confidence and say, this is never going to leave the Campfire environment. So I think those things are why customers come to us and say, your AI leadership, these are the things that stood out.
Yeah, that's really cool. And all of those points are super compelling. This makes me really excited to take a look at the current version of the Campfire product and sit down with one of my team members after this call.
Great.
So,
yeah, and we're thrilled to have joint customers with you guys, and we hear great things, and so we love investing in the partnership, and would love to make sure everyone's getting full value out of the platform.
Awesome. Before we talk about the fundraises that you completed in 2025, maybe one last AI question. What's a use case that you have uncovered that is maybe a little bit less within the realm of finance and accounting that you find yourself using the most in your day-to-day, whether it's as CEO or in your personal life?
In my personal life, I have two daughters, and so asking questions about parenting, honestly, it's incredibly helpful. In the work setting, there's something called sparring, where you need a thought partner on something, where it's should I go to the board with this, or how do I think through this big situation? We have our 2026 plan here at Campfire for ARR, and I was working through with Claude Cowork today of can you stress test the plan? What are the holes in it? How do I need to make sure? And it was kind of articulate, and it built an entire deck of how do I ensure we hit the plan? It was a 30-page deck. How do you ensure you get to plan? And there's just a lot of value I see of just being the founder and CEO here, of just kind of working through the biggest problems at Campfire, without going, and then I can go to the board and say look, here's all the things I've thought through, and it really helps me think differently. So those are some of the ones that stand out. Of course, I run our Campfire environment here, so I'm always asking questions why did engineering spend go up, and querying Campfire, and it always tells me too. So that'd be my Campfire answer.
Awesome. Parenting and navigating board dynamics, two very high impact Claude use cases. Oh, that's great. Okay, so shifting gears a little bit here, would love to go behind the scenes a little bit around your 2025 fundraising journey. So you raised 2 rounds in pretty quick succession, taking your total funding raise to over $100 million. So congratulations on hitting that milestone in your journey. I know you feel like you're probably just getting started, but that is a big achievement that not a lot of startups hit. So talk me through, I guess, just maybe at a high level, the fundraise process in 2025. So you raise your Series A, and then I think 10 weeks later is Series B. Well, I'll let you tell the story. How did all of this kind of come together, just at start to finish, and then maybe we could dive into some individual components.
Yeah, I would say the business really started to inflect in Q4 2024, and going into 2025. I mean, Alex, we have more than doubled ARR each of the last 6 quarters. And so we were kind of on this kind of trajectory that has only steepened since then. And going into the A, we hit the traditional kind of Series A milestones. I was still the only AE, the only solution consultant here, kind of doing all the deals myself. And we added one AE and things like instantly went more vertical. And kind of talking to our seed investors, and we came out of Y Combinator, talking to them as well, they were like clearly like early signs of like more dollars in as more dollars out. And so there started to get a lot of inbound demand to go do an A. Kicked off. YC was very supportive on the kickoff there and made some great intros. But within 2 weeks had, many term sheets. And it just came down to choosing the right board member. John Locke at Excel, I had worked at in a prior company. We had a successful exit together. I'd invoiced to go for $625 million. And so I think there's a lot of familiarity working with him. I'd invoiced to go. Obviously, Excel is a phenomenal franchise. That ultimately is who I went with for the A. And then the business continued to inflect and get steeper and started to see a lot of lower, as soon as we announced the A, a lot of lower enterprise folks with, hundreds of millions, even billions of annual revenue reaching out and saying, your demo is great. Like, we're ready to buy, but candidly, 35 million is not a lot of money to us because we're in the public markets. And so, they're like, if you could get to a spot where we just don't have to think about your going concern, the financial profile of your business, this is mission critical software. You are the AWS of the back office. You are a system of record for us. We need full confidence. You're going to be here forever. And so both of those events, just the sheer velocity. I mean, I started getting cold inbound term sheets from tier 1A folks just saying, here's a term sheet, essentially without even taking, because I had just done the A and I was like, I'm not fundraising. But those data points combined, just the opportunity was too good to pass. And it really opened up kind of a larger business that was not expecting us to get to so quickly. And so, added 100 million in funding over the summer. The one painful part on a personal level is I told my wife, I got to run super hard at this until I get the A done, and then we'll go on vacation. And then things took off. And so had to rethink the vacation, Alex. But ultimately, we ended up going on that vacation after the B.
Hopefully it was a nicer vacation than you were planning on taking originally once you got that additional funding make up for it with the wife a little bit. No, thank you for sharing that. It sounds like between the A and the B, you had a pretty material amount of your time taken up in 2025 around fundraising. How did you think about managing that fundraise process while also running the business? And how did you, what sorts of things did you have to pass off to other team members while you were in fundraise mode? And just, how did you navigate that split?
I passed off nothing. So honestly, I was the only solution consultant, still running the business. It was just a lot of late nights. I mean, I remember I opened up like a little data room for investor like 1 a.m. on a Saturday. So I think, especially with kids, you got to work around nap schedules and, when folks go to bed. So I still had kind of the home life, that I wanted to be responsive to. But quick plug, like Campfire was super helpful. A lot of the materials, the ARR waterfalls, NRR, even all the diligence or questions, I just uploaded the spreadsheet into Campfire and I just said, kick out top 10 contracts from a materiality standpoint. And it was just firing everything out. So did the A and the B myself with no help. I mean, Excel was helpful on the B given they were in on the A. The hardest part is like you're still expected to maintain revenue velocity and you're still on the front lines as an AE. And so it's like, how do you, to your point, it was like sales calls and investor calls, kind of just back to back through the day, trying to keep both up and to the right. It's grueling. It's a lot of work.
Yeah, that's a really great lesson for folks who are maybe at the beginning of their journey as a venture-backed startup, right? Like, it is not for the faint of heart. And while you clearly had the traction that had VCs sliding into your emails cold with term sheets, like that sounds like 2 or 3 full-time jobs that you were juggling at one time for like 6 months or so. So yeah, I guess that is really what it takes if you want to raise $100 million from top tier investors. And so, yeah, I appreciate you kind of not like putting that glossy sheen over top of what it really takes to build a generational company. Just one other funny thing. I've talked to a couple of other folks in the back office tech space who said similar things about the benefit of having your product help you in the diligence process. And it probably also is pretty compelling when you're pitching VCs as well, because they kind of get a demo of your tool while they're reviewing your data room and all of that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So
I will say for the audience, like it's like a job interview process where you want to put all of them and stack them all up at the same time, and you want to run them all to the conclusion concurrently, just like job interviews. So you actually intentionally, like coming out of Y Combinator, they were like, book every meeting in the same 2-week window. And I was doing 10 to 15, seed investor meetings a day. I think as you go, from C to A to B, the list of potential investors gets a little shorter each time, but you want to really truncate all of it into one process. You want to create hype. You want to call it FOMO. You really want everything to be like aligned where all the term sheets are hitting at the same time. And so there's this kind of whole intent and, call it reason to make it that way. So for the founders out there, I think you really don't want to like sequence them or stagger it. If you're ready and you're going to go, you got to go. And day one of process, like how many can you book at once? And obviously you want to iterate and learn. Maybe day one, you kind of, looks like my slide 4 didn't land. Let's redo slide 4 for day 2. But you really want to pull it all together at once.
Yeah, that's really good advice. So you've obviously been through many fundraising rounds, both at Invoice to Go and then here at Campfire. What's the one lesson that you learned in maybe your last couple of fundraising experiences that you wish you'd known at the beginning when you were first sitting down in front of investors?
It's a great question. There's a lot of things I could say here, but I will say investors essentially are for life. I mean, I do tell founders, think of it as like a marriage. If they're getting a board seat, this is your new boss. And I can give anyone a raise at the company but myself. I have to go to the board. And they are your boss. And so it's not like maybe you go for the best fund or the top tier partner, but like however you choose who you work with, then you need to make sure that like there's going to be a great kind of long-term relationship here. I've had bad board members in prior lives, and it's something I don't wish on anybody, but really spend as much time as you can. I was going for walks with some of the folks like on a weekend, really get to know them, ask them tough questions, and back channel super, super hard, and ask the tough questions on the back channel. Like, how were they when things got tough? How, when you asked for a raise as a founder, like, did they say yes? I think just like stuff like that, you'll quickly treat it like you're hiring somebody on your own team where you back channel hard, you put them through paces, you really check for culture. That will manifest through your entire organization of how they think, because it manifests through you and how you work with them. So I think that's my biggest area of advice.
Back channeling is very key. And I that's an interesting point about a founder choosing their investors and their board members is one of those rare situations where you're actually selecting your own boss. So framing it like that, I think it would make you select for a different set of things. I'm curious, when you were evaluating from amongst the term sheets that you received, going into that evaluation process, I don't know if you had like a formal rubric, but what were the most important characteristics that you were looking for in your partner, keeping in mind that it is a super long-term relationship that you're setting out on?
Yeah. I mean, to your point, like we were fortunate that at seed A and B, we did have a material number of term sheets for each round from, call it, phenomenal investors, all household names. And so I think assuming you've got that level of luxury, call it, where you get to choose, I do focus on stage appropriate investors. So like for seed, I really went with foundation because that's their sweet spot. excel, graded A. So I think kind of like think through stage appropriate, because then they have subsequent reserves for your stage. They kind of like they're built for that stage. And so I think just all the infrastructure is for that stage, the questions they ask you in board meetings are for that stage. I think, and they can help their network for executives, for example, is the best of that. Like everything is just stage appropriate in everything that they do. Beyond that, both board members here, I had worked with in a prior life. So to my comment earlier, like there was familiarity, there was trust that had been established, and I'd seen them operate in the boardroom before through good and difficult times. And so maybe you don't have that option. So back channeling or kind of doing your own work would be important. There, from a recruiting standpoint, it's helpful to have kind of a great name. Candidly, I think beyond that, just go with the right partner is just my honest take. And I think the reasons I stated earlier, kind of partner selection. But they're going to be in the trenches with you. So I'll just continue to lean on the right partner. Of course, there's like terms too. Of course, it's got to be a clean term sheet. Yeah, like there's valuation, there's ownership. There's other things about how they think about round construction. And I think beyond just actually what's on the term sheet, like are they intentionally leaving room for other folks? Some were trying to aggressively box out the pro rata for earlier investors. And so, for folks that are familiar, it just means like earlier investors have some right to continue to follow on their investment, and that can be important to them. So you can actually kind of learn how folks operate just by how they try and construct the round with other folks, because then in future rounds, how are they going to think? So there's a lot to weigh. I would say choosing the right partner, the right investor has been maybe the most difficult decision I've made at Campfire. I mean, it is. I candidly, I do find it to be overwhelming. I think it's not, like I said earlier, it is a marriage, but it's in a very truncated period of time. You don't get this long dating window unless you already got to know them. And choosing the right one's important.
Totally. Yeah. And it makes total sense why you would have a preference for folks that you've already been through that startup journey with, and you'd probably already seen how was it John from Excel reacted in difficult situations. So you didn't have to rely on hearsay to understand like how he would be when the going gets tough, which is obviously like one of the most important things in a relationship or in an investor founder sort of dynamic. So that was a great answer. Thanks for kind of being vulnerable with me about that. I would love to hear your thoughts on the current state of the funding environment as we head into 2026. You were talking a little bit about how you went after stage-specific VCs when you were funding at Campfire, and it makes a ton of sense. We do see this dynamic, which I've been thinking about a lot recently, where you have this divide opening up between mega funds who are playing across all stages, and then you have the more niche specialists on the other end of the barbell, and then this kind of like no man's land in the middle. How do you think that the funding environment just directionally is changing? And curious if you have any advice on how that impacts a founder's approach that they should take when they're going out for a fundraise.
Yeah, I would say really understand the macro environment. Like it has softened a bit. I would say in the last quarter, there's been some softening. A lot of founders ask me for like fundraising advice, and I take as many calls as I can. There has been some softening, even for like, call it the AI natives. I think you need to show some level of durability, knowing that like the leading, call it commercial models, are kind of going after a lot of applications. OpenAI is now buying healthcare apps, and they're kind of like moving into the application layer, similar to Anthropic is. Are you like one LM update away from being replaced? Is there durability? how do you show like that, the unit economics, depending on the size of your business and the size and which round you're doing. But I think like really just going into the raise of here is how this is such a durable business that, whether it's Claude Cowork or some new kind of thing comes out, that's actually like accretive for us. Like for us, it was as AI got better, our gap with the incumbents grew. And so actually it was like AI kind of materially kind of creates more and more of a wedge as opposed to the opposite. And so you want to be on like the right side of that.
Totally. And you're building a platform at Campfire, which is not going to be vibe coded in a weekend by anyone. So you have that going for you as well, where I think that's probably something that a lot of traditional SaaS businesses can't say. No, that makes a ton of sense. On the durability piece and kind of like the unit economics, I actually just wrote something this morning about how VCs are thinking about gross margins and what metrics are most heavily scrutinized today by VCs who are evaluating potential investments. Obviously, it's going to vary business by business, but what would you say are some of those key metrics that have become more important in the AI native era that companies should be tracking to try to tell their story to investors?
Yeah, when I was in Y Combinator, candidly, Y Combinator is very blunt with founders, and I think it's good because a lot of people, particularly at home or friends or family, like, great idea, awesome. Y Combinator was just very clear, do not sell $2 of AI tokens for $1. Like, you need to build a real business, and you need to have, to your question, like contribution margin, gross margin, whatever flavor you want to call it, you need to have some path. Operating margin, fine, lose a lot of money, but at scale, when this business hits 100 million in ARR, like, is there a contribution margin or gross margin or not? And if it's $200 million in AI tokens and it's 100 million in ARR, taking that YC example at scale, like, that's when you're in a difficult spot. And so then are you betting the models to kind of materially kind of flatten out in the cost? Are you going to build your own foundational model and then you're going to get operating leverage that way because you don't have the kind of inherent, variable cost in every single kind of consumption moment in the product? Like, if you are going to be, call it low to negative, you got to have a very compelling logic of how you're going to dig your way out. And I think that's the one we see by far the most. The other one is like everyone's moving to usage-based pricing. So we've made like massive investments in supporting that for our customer base. And how does that like manifest, in terms of per customer? It can be hard to forecast in the early days. Like, what is the usage per customer going to be? You're like in year 3, like what does it actually look like when you're only a 2-year-old company? And so, how do you continue to show the compounding within organizations when it's not just kind of a clear like SaaS renewal like it was 5 years ago?
Yeah. So many of the like traditional rules that startups operated by seem to be kind of getting thrown to the wayside right now, shifting business models and shifting investor expectations. On the gross margin side, what do you see from maybe like across the cross section of your customers that run on Campfire? Do you see that they are over time like expanding their gross margin because the models are getting cheaper? Or do you think that the low gross margins overall are a symptom of maybe the platform not adding a ton of value?
As they scale, our customers have made this, what we see, like make material investments in pricing. And so they get a lot better at pricing the consumption. And that largely will solve, unless solving pricing for you like breaks the business, like if you're creating real value, then it's like, okay, this action, we're going to reprice. And this other action, remember the first action, we're going to reprice higher. Second action, we can reprice lower. But then better aligning value and price at a consumption level within the product. Like launching kind of product SKUs or event-driven pricing. Instead of all tokens being worth kind of one, it's like maybe a multiple tokens for this larger event, kind of a single token for the smaller event. Getting the fine-tuned, call it pricing right, is where we see them solve for it. The models getting cheaper is certainly part of it, but the customer base of ours, we see them growing so fast. I mean, 0 to 100 million ARR in under a year, that we haven't seen AI dramatically shift kind of costs down as fast as these folks are growing. So it's more about just like getting things dialed, and then they dig their way out.
Yeah, that's super interesting. How are you pricing the AI features inside of Campfire? Is it kind of all you can consume for the license that a company signs up for? Or are there certain modules that are priced on a usage basis? How do you think about that?
Yeah, we're currently all you can eat. And I think having our own model gives us that luxury that we incur essentially zero incremental cost when someone performs an action with our own foundational model. There's probably a scenario where we start to protect ourselves at some sort of scale and align kind of value and price for AI consumption. But today, we're very, very high gross margin in this current environment.
Awesome. Well, we're coming up on time here. Maybe to just bring it back to the fundraise and advice for founders who are gearing up for their own fundraising cycle. What's one resource, be it a book or a YouTube channel or a podcast, that you'd really recommend to folks to check out as they are trying to get smart on navigating their fundraise?
I would say the most helpful is just talk to a founder that just raised the round you're looking to raise. I think the market can move so fast. There's a book, I can follow up with you on it, but I think it's called like Angel, or there's a book from Brad Feld. I read it maybe 10 years ago. If I had a book, maybe that would be it. But I would say
Venture Deals.
Thank you.
I got
Venture
Angel
Deals.
somewhere here.
But I will say there's a lot of bad fundraising advice out there. So, I wouldn't just kind of consume all of it. Talk to a founder that just had a successful raise. Ideally, the business looks like yours. And, assuming they're willing to share some data points. But my number one piece of advice, and it's boring, but build a great business and then have an inflection point and raise around an inflection point in the business. So I mentioned we had an AE and we were inflecting. We were essentially vertical on the ARR chart when we went out for the A. So find some, when is your business doing really well? Do you feel things are super hot? Those are the times to raise, and then go in with strength and confidence, and then kind of, again, put everybody in that tight window around this catalyst moment, around this moment of velocity in your business, and good things will come.
That's a really great place to end, I think. Really great advice. John, thank you so much for talking to me today. I really appreciate how you are and your team are leading the charge when it comes to implementing AI within the back office tech stack. And I think you gave some really great tips for founders who are going to be looking to follow in your footsteps and raising their Series A, Series B here coming up in 2026. Big fans of what you're building here at Air CFO, and we're really excited to follow along on your journey and hopefully play a small role in it as well.
Thank you so much, Alex. We're thrilled to be partnered with you and team. And for folks listening, check us out at campfire.ai. If you want to ping me directly, John at campfire.ai. Always happy to hear from other folks. Thanks for the time today.
Thank you, John. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.